What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's video. This is going to be an in-depth look at the smallmouth patterns, those little secret tips and all that. Well, maybe not so secret, but all the things that were going on, the patterns, the gear, the lures that I used while I was up in Canada. If you guys missed the Canadian videos, or if you're a new subscriber, they'll be at the end of this video as well, where you can go check them out. During the father-son fishing competition, that was the day we went hardcore after smallmouth. And you know, I wasn't focused on giving tips. I was focused on beating my world champion dad. But I was also focused on making more entertainment style video, and I was not focused on giving the tips. Like if you go back into the old school LFG videos, where that's really how I started this channel. For those of you that are new, really in-depth tips and how-tos, and really just all about bass fishing. And then YouTube's kind of evolved over the last couple of years. It's kind of become more of like this vlogosphere and you know, this entertainment style video, which I'm cool with. I love making the skits for you guys. You guys love that, and I love vlogging too. But my real passion, like what I can talk all day about, just go on and on and on and on and on, is the techniques and everything that goes along with getting that bite. And just to make a plug up front, before we get too hardcore into the fishing aspect of the video, Texas Rig shirts are available right now, lfgfish.com. I'll have the link in the description, and I'll have a card link in this video as well. Just got these in. These are fresh off the press, and they're going to be available right now. So a couple of different colors, you guys can go check it out. If you're from Texas, obviously it's a home run, but if you just enjoy fishing the Texas Rig like me, especially during the summertime, you get that big old worm out there, feel that thump. It just hits home, man. It's just a good, juicy feeling. So you can support that with a shirt. You support the channel. I appreciate you guys watching all the videos, leaving all the great comments, and you know, I'm seeing more Fishing Freak gear out there. People send me pictures and all that. It's so awesome. So thank you for all you fishing freaks. Now let's get down to the fishing. Now we're going to be interjecting some never before seen Canadian fishing footage in here. I had a lot of clips. There was a lot of fish caught that never made the video. But one of the other things I wanted to show you was my tackle box that I worked so dang hard for, that you guys helped me build, that got lost in Canada. I finally got it back. So I wanted to go through that as well. And this thing is just jam-packed, man. It's heavy. It's got everything I needed. And by the way, the first day I was out there, I filmed for MTB doing a man versus lake bit. And I've talked about that a couple times, but I go into detail on all the patterns for the first day. And then what I'm doing right here is basically giving you guys the whole spiel from the whole trip. Nice glass backs, bro. Now let's talk about baits. And the one that is no surprise to anybody is the tube, the green pumpkin tube. It was just a clear winner. Anytime you're talking about smallmouth, this is gonna be a great bait anywhere you go. And I went with the Strike King tube. This is a 3.5 inch actually. Some people said smaller tubes, you know, but this is about all I could get my hands on down here in Texas. We don't have super small tubes. The smallmouth up there had real tiny mouths, so they do key in on smaller baits sometimes. But as you'll see in one of the upcoming videos tomorrow, that's not always the case. The tube ended up being great, and how we rigged it up was we were putting a insert head inside the tube. And if you've never done this before, I've actually thought about doing this down here in Texas because I never really try it. The insert head makes the fall of the bait different. It kind of does this spiral deal, and you don't get snagged near as much. So it's a really great way to rig it. And the best weight was a 1/8, and I didn't always have 1/8 because I was losing them on the rocks and stuff. So sometimes I had a 1/16, sometimes I had a 5/16, but the 1/8 was definitely the best. Had the right fall rate, and it wouldn't get hung up in the rocks as much. But basically just working that in between, I call them basketball sized boulders, and if you could find those, it seemed like that was a good area. The other bait I thought was gonna be the juice when I first got there was the grub. I had a smoke colored grub, and I was fishing that shallow, and I had some fish on it, but then again, the tube, once I started throwing that, it was very clear they wanted those tubes. They were eating up on crawfish. The walleye were even eating crawfish. Pike were obviously eating crawfish as well. They had, everything was eating crawfish, so the tube was a clear winner. Now let's talk about the gear I was throwing this tube on. If I was down in Texas, I'd probably be throwing the tube on a bait caster setup, if I was throwing like a Texas rig. But up there, had to fish lighter line with that real clear water, and fishing the lighter weights, the spinning gear just made it a lot easier. And I was throwing 12-pound braids so I could get mega distance. It was very easy to just flick this thing out there from the kayak and get great distance, even with fishing a 16th ounce weight with that tube. So 12-pound braid, and I had 15-pound fluorocarbon leader on that, and I was tying the Alberta knot on that. It's Alberta or Alberto, I can't remember which one it is. A knot I recently learned. If you haven't seen that video, you can go back and check that out. I'll put a link in the description. But that knot is killer. I've been really using that on my braid to fluorocarbon here the last few months. Love it. The rod I was fishing was a 6-foot medium power fast action. This is the favorite Phantom series rod. 6 foot was great for the kayak. I could handle the fish really good around the boat. The smallmouth are crazy when they're jumping around right next to the boat. So the 6 foot sounds a little short, but it actually held up really well. I didn't have problems with the hook set because I had braid on there. I was getting a good hook set with that, plus the low stretch of the fluorocarbon. And I had a 20 or a 2000 size reel on here. This is the favorite Phantom size or Phantom reel that I had on there. That combo was killer for tubes and grubs. The 15 was just good. I didn't want to hook into a big smallie and have it break off with working the bait on the rocks. I ended up retying a lot working those tubes, just because just running in the rocks constantly, it really seemed to damage the line. Another really solid pattern was throwing a topwater bait, in specific the popar bait. My dad actually ended up catching more fish on this than I did, but you had to be super patient. And fishing this popar bait around those same areas I was fishing the tubes, you could throw this out there, and the key was letting it sit for a long time. Now I got tired of not latching onto the fish. They'd come up and they'd hit this, and you know, I didn't have my box with, I had like 15 poppers in here. I had such great colors. I'm still irritated about it if you can't tell. But I remembered the mayfly hatch last year happening and that being a key pattern. And if you had the right topwater and the right color, they would come up and they'd slurp it. If I would have had the popar like this, you know, with a black feathered treble on it and a very translucent color, I think I would have caught a lot more fish. It was a very prevalent pattern, often letting this thing sit there for 10, 15 seconds. That's a super long pause. And what was happening was a lot of those fish were on beds, or they were just in the area being aggressive, maybe feeding on mayflies. And if you let it sit there for a long time, eventually they'd just get pissed at it and come up and they'd swat it. Now I was throwing that on 12-pound monofilament line because that was floating. That was crucial for letting that sit there for a long time. You can't do that with fluorocarbon because it'll sink, it'll screw up your whole situation. And I had the 7-foot rush. I had the medium, this is a medium power rod, so it's a lot softer rod, so you could throw those topwaters out there, and I was actually throwing my crankbaits on that as well. I didn't carry many rods, so I just kind of had some rods that I could throw a couple different things on, and that's what I threw the topwater on. That was a key bait. I felt like it got big bites, but eventually, after missing a lot of fish on that, I decided to really stick with some of the more bottom bouncing style baits. Now, what ended up being really exciting for me is about halfway through the father-son fishing battle, I realized that fishing windy banks was actually getting a lot of bites, and then throwing those moving baits that I'm really used to fishing was a key deal. So I picked up a chatterbait, and I ended up putting a Kitech trailer on here. I got a bunch of these. I ordered a bunch of these. I had colors like Smallmouth Magic. I had all sorts of translucent colors. And it was a downsized chatterbait. It was I believe it was a 5/16. So it was like a pond style version of a chatterbait. It wasn't a big version. I had trouble with it really running great. I think it was a Strike King model, like kind of a pond fishing style. I don't have it, I broke it off, but that bait ended up being amazing for me, and that tight wobble with that little Kitech on there, and it was a bright color, chartreuse and white. They were just slamming that thing, but it had to be on a real windy bank, which was tough. It was challenging to fish out of the kayak, but man, you just go in there with the waves, throw it all the way up to the bank, and I'm talking like as far as you can get to the bank, a couple of cranks in, and woof, they'd inhale that thing. It was an awesome bite. And that sparred from one spinnerbait that I had, literally one spinnerbait, and I caught a couple of fish on it, ended up breaking one of the blades off because those smallmouth are such savages, and then I only had one chatterbait. And if I would have had more, I would have just stuck with that pattern. I would have just gone to windy points, windy banks, and really stuck with that. I ended up fishing the spinnerbaits on a 6/6 medium heavy power rod, which is, you know, not too far off from what I would fish back in Texas. I fish a 7-foot medium heavy in the kayak, again, making those short casts, easy casts, and being able to maneuver the fish around the boat. This really helped. I didn't have to make super long casts. I had the wind at my back, so it worked out really good. And I had 16-pound fluorocarbon on there, so I had the line size bumped up, and it was fine. It was good. I caught some pike on that as well. Didn't end up breaking my line. So that setup was just like being back in Texas and getting up there on a windy bank, throwing a spinner bait, and just boom. Gotta love that feeling, man. But unlike Texas, you hook in one of those big old brown smallmouth up there and they come jumping a couple of feet in the air and they're all charged up. I hope every single one of you fish freaks gets to experience one of those smallmouth like that one day. It's just too cool. When we talk about locations, I really identified dead water out there as being pretty much main lake, anywhere on the real main lake areas that had real deep water, like the big boulders. What you would typically think of with smallmouth fishing, or what I'm used to smallmouth fishing down here in Texas, Oklahoma area, and some of the other Tennessee lakes I fished, it was really the opposite up there. It was really due to the time of year. They were up there spawning, doing their thing. They were in those same areas you would expect largemouth to be in, areas that had some sand around the bank, looking for spawning areas with some pea gravel, and then those chunk rocks that I talked about, and areas just out of the wind, so out of the prevailing wind, a little calm area. That's where the spawners were, and then you had the pre and post spawners that were ganged up in those same type scenario areas. Whether you were in the wind or out of the wind, you had to find that mixture of the pea-sized gravel with the little sand. If you could find those reeds that were sticking up, that was a key indicator that there was gonna be some fish in that area. Dadgummit, guys, I could go on all day about this smallmouth fishing and fishing in general. I just can't get enough of it. I could literally sit here all day and talk till I was out of breath. But I wanna know what you guys think in the comments about breaking this stuff down. If any of this helped you guys, I hope it does. Please let me know. Maybe you have some smallmouth fisheries up north that you're going to, and hopefully this will help. And if any of you have good smallmouth tips that I left out for post-spawn smallies, let us know in the comments. I would like to know, since I'm going up there here in the next few weeks, and I'd like to have a couple more tips in my arsenal. If you guys are down to see something crazy, tune in tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's video is gonna be nuts. I caught the fish of a lifetime, I think, and the ways I was catching the other fish I was catching was just absurd. It was shocking. It's gonna be an extra juicy video for you. And speaking of juicy, if you guys like the extra tips in here, the extra juicy tips, go ahead and hit that like button, squeeze it on out, and I'm interested to see what you guys leave in the comments. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to check out the Texas Rig shirt, if you want to wear it while you're hooking fish on a Texas rig and post it up on the gram, you can do that. Get your shirt, stick a fish, post it up on the gram, tag me at Lakeforkguy. Just might repost that because I like Texas rigs and I love fishing freaks. And that is going to do it for this video, fishing freaks. We'll see you tomorrow night.